Hi everybody. I hope you enjoyed the small break we just had. At least I did. It was good to network with some people and to see some familiar faces. Also good to see that there are a lot of new people in comparison to last year. So it's good that this is really holding your mind. So my name is Esteban van Goor. I'm based in Amsterdam. I work for Baker McKenzie. I'm a tax lawyer there, and I am focused on e-commerce, Bitcoin, other virtual currencies, and gaming. So most of my clients are in the e-space, and I thought, okay, I also will write a PhD about that, because if I know how my clients do business, I also think I should share that knowledge so now and then. My focus is value-added tax, so VAT. I know that in the GCC there are currently some discussions in relation to VAT, and your framework agreement has been agreed upon. So planned 2018, you will have also a VAT system in place. Within Baker, what I do is especially on a global level advise clients on their VAT position. Taking my background that I'm a Bitcoin enthusiast, I also deal with a lot of Bitcoin-related companies and also some blockchain-related companies. So before I start, I always start with this. It's just a code. If we look at it, we wouldn't understand it. Like normal glasses, if we would take a better look, wouldn't work in this world. The only thing what would work if we would look at it from a more virtual perspective. So go into virtual reality and try to understand what this actually is. So agenda today is I'm gonna deal with some blockchain, Bitcoin related use cases, blockchain development from a legal perspective, and EU implications and developments in relation to blockchain, but also in relation to Bitcoin / virtual currencies. I will start with the use cases. So those are things which I see in practice, and I think the first one is the one we all deal with. I mean, everybody is sending emails. Every day, daily, we're sending emails. Sometimes an email doesn't arrive. So I had with Mo yesterday, he sent me an email, I said, hey, I didn't get your email. Where did it go? He's like, look in your spam filter. Spam filter is actually based on a proof of work concept. Name is Hashcash. 1997, it was introduced, and Hashcash limits the amount of spam emails and also DOS attacks. In relation to emails, how it works is actually if you send an email, you need to put in some CPU, so some computer power, in order to send that email, and so the receiving email box will understand that the sender did at least some effort for sending that email, and then it's not considered as spam. Then we of course have Bitcoin. So October 2008, there was a white paper published by Satoshi Nakamoto explaining a peer-to-peer electronic cash system named Bitcoin. In his white paper, he mentions also Hashcash, so he refers to Adam Back, who is actually the one who developed Hashcash. Bitcoin, I assume, does anybody here own Bitcoin? Perfect, that's at least a good 30% of the room. I think always when we speak about blockchain, we sometimes forget to speak about Bitcoin. Bitcoin is, of course, the ecosystem in which blockchain technology is used, and it's used in such a way that transactions are validated and, of course, are stored, secured in a blockchain, not to be changed again, and preventing double spending. Another use case which we see now a lot, and which a lot of discussions are going on about that, are smart contracts. So smart contracts is a computerized transaction protocol which executes a contract automatically. So meaning we make an agreement. So let's say I will sell goods, and if I receive the payment, goods will be sent. We can put that in a smart contract, and as soon as I receive the payment, goods will be sent automatically, or services will be rendered automatically, so a download would be made available. Another example of smart contract is a decentralized autonomous organization, and in the Bitcoin community we have had an example for that. I will not give that example. I will give another example which maybe is something for the future. So a decentralized autonomous organization could even be just a car, a self-driving car, who could function as a taxi. So that's the agreement which you made with the car. And it will pick up customers, it will receive payments, it will automatically itself go for maintenance when there's something wrong with the car, and of course it will go for fuel. It will refuel when necessary. That's a car acting autonomous without any human intervention, and that could be, of course, coded in a smart contract. So always when I say at these type of conferences, or a Bitcoin-related conference, or a blockchain-related conference, hey, I'm a tax lawyer, people are always like, okay, so do I need to pay taxes? Or is it regulated? What's the best place that I could establish my business? First thing I would say, just calm down. First, we need to understand what you're actually doing before we start talking about the legal implications. So there could be multiple legal implications which people don't actually think about when they think about blockchain, because a lot of times they just think about, in comparison to Bitcoin, is there a necessity to have, for example, a license, e-money license, or do I need to have some specific agreements in place with my customers, which states specifically that you're entering into a smart contract. One of the things which I would like to mention is, for example, you have ICOs. Those are within the community pretty well known. So sometimes when a new coin starts or when a new development team starts, they give out tokens, and those tokens can be bought, for example, with Bitcoin. Could go well. So I mean, in the end, a lot of time the funds are used for actual development. In some occasions, it can go wrong. So one time it went a bit wrong with one of the smart contracts. It got hacked, and a hacker got like 50 million worth in coins because he was able to hack the smart contract. In those type of situations, you always start thinking like, okay, how should we actually deal with this from a security-wise perspective? So is it allowed to just do an ICO, which is comparable to an IPO, without any legislation, without any licensing, without any consumer protection, because people can actually lose their money there without making a prospectus, because people can invest as much money as they want in Bitcoin. Those are things really to think about, and there's no clear guidance on that right now. There are no clear regulations on that right now. So for the community, and I think for a legislator, it's still very gray. It's a very gray area. Of course, activities over the internet may trigger consumption, consumer data protection, intellectual property related questions. Data protection, it's actually within the EU. I will speak about it later. It's one of the things which is one of the pillars which is dealt with a directive which was published last year. Blockchain is not specifically mentioned, but transferring data over a network is. So that is, in my view, also covering blockchain. Anti-money laundering and know your customer legislation are also things which are currently being discussed, especially on a European level, I'll also discuss that a bit more thoroughly later, but those are things which now come into play. A lot of my clients always ask, like, okay, I have this. What do I need to do, and what do I need to do for meeting anti-money laundering legislation or meeting know your customer legislation? A lot of times governments don't have any legislation for these type of companies, so they don't know how to deal. So, for example, in the Netherlands, if one of my clients would say, okay, I want to open a Bitcoin exchange, so I can buy Bitcoin for fiat, so for traditional currency. Do I need a license for that? No, the answer is no. It's clearly stated on the website of the financial authorities. But then what I always advise is send a letter to the authorities, get the letter that it says that you don't need a license, look at anti-money laundering and know your customer legislation, implement it in such a way that you're clean. And that all have to do also with financial regulatory legislation. So financial regulatory legislation is, for example, using an e-money license if you're into Bitcoin space. And the reason why I mentioned Bitcoin, I mean, I just gave the 3 use cases we previously discussed about blockchain. One of them is Bitcoin. I mean, in the end, it could be that, for example, in Dubai, we are creating an own coin, which could be used. Then these are also things which you should take into account when creating your own coin. These are also things which you take into account in relation to smart contracts, how to deal with it from a consumer way, from data protection. So within the EU, you see a lot of discussions now going on by the European Commission. So the European Commission is really on top of Bitcoin, virtual currencies, and also blockchain. They're a little bit loose on blockchain, and I will show you what I mean with that. So their real focus is on virtual currencies. This is not only the European Commission who's dealing with that, it's also the OECD, so that's international organization who deals with economies worldwide. And they mentioned in one of their papers that they are monitoring virtual currencies and that there's no clear legislation yet, but they're working on it. The European Union is working on it, and a lot of times the European Union tries to do it in such a way that it could be an example, same as in VAT law. European Union is there an example for other countries to follow. So an example of implications with blockchain within the European Union. So anti-money laundering and know your customers legislation, none. So last year, the European Commission published a proposal in relation to their new anti-money laundering and know your customer legislation. And what they mentioned there is specifically virtual currencies, yes. So certain virtual currencies service providers, such as a Bitcoin wallet or virtual currency wallet, where you keep coins, need to meet these legislations. But specifically for blockchain, they said no. For blockchain, there will not be any implications in that area because they still think it's too early to look at legislation for blockchain right now. They're monitoring it, but they just want to see what's going to happen with this technology. And I think it's a good approach. You hear a lot about blockchain, you hear a lot of people speaking about blockchain, but I think we can only actually see what blockchain does in maybe a few years, maybe even faster. I hope it will be faster. You have a lot of applications running, but what will actually work and how would it work in practice? Specifically in relation to smart contracts, a lot of times as a tax lawyer or also lawyers, you hear okay, you're going to be out of a job. You will not have a job anymore if this smart contracting will develop. I don't fully agree with that because, for example, with smart contracting, it's very hard to code certain knowledge which a lawyer has, certain expertise which a lawyer has, certain standard work, yes. Blockchain, whatever you want to call it, blockchain or any other name, would work. So security of network and information system. That's an important one because automatic processing of digital data is currently covered in a directive. So in the European Union, if you are into the network and IT area, you need to meet certain legislation which are dealt with by member states. So different member states need to meet with a directive. Of course, it's a directive, and within European law, if there is a directive, there are differences within the European Union. So member states can use their own interpretation for certain things. Sometimes that leads to case law. A lot of times that leads to case law, and that's not preferable. So in relation to Bitcoin, there are multiple things which are going on. Anti-money laundering legislation and know your customer legislation will be applicable for Bitcoin. In relation to VAT law, I think we had a very interesting case. The European Court of Justice defined Bitcoin. So they compared Bitcoin to a means of payment which is comparable to traditional currency, which means that Bitcoin is actually treated similar to a legal tender, which is a good thing. It's a good development within VAT law. But I think as a legislator, if a legislator is here, it's good to maybe provide a definition of it because it gives clarity on what it is. And specifically if you use, for example, virtual currencies running through a blockchain, it could be Bitcoin or on your own coin. Financial regulatory is not harmonized in the European Union, and that's a bad thing because it causes distortion. So also with the GCC, if you're thinking about, for example, implementing a VAT system or implementing regulation in relation to blockchain or Bitcoin, think about how you can create certainty for companies. Because a lot of times my clients, they don't have a lot of certainty within the European Union. And the cause is because there are no clear guidelines on how to deal with this. So I think if you want to be ahead of the curve, which I see you do, also taking into consideration tomorrow of this morning's presentations, very impressive. I also think like from a legislative side, be ahead of the curve and think ahead. Maybe not like be strict on regulation, but think ahead. So one last example, in the European Union, they are also working on Bitcoin-related projects. One is My Health, My Data, and the other one is a decentralized citizen-owned data ecosystem. Both are based on a blockchain, on blockchain technology. So My Health, My Data is actually data of people who are ill. It's secured. Their health data is all kept in this safe environment. In my view, for the future, I also think within tax law there will be a few developments. One of the things which you could use with blockchain technology is combating VAT fraud. So if a VAT payment is made, you make a split. So considering that you will implement VAT law soon, why would you have a trusted party, so a company collecting VAT for you as a government and paying it to the government? Why would you have that? You could use a blockchain technology to receive funds for the company and automatically got a payment to the tax authorities, which would work and is safe and secure. So that can prevent fraud and a lot of problems which we see in the European Union, costing on estimate 160 billion a year in VAT fraud. I will not explain the fraud, but it's there. In case you have any questions or if you would like to have like a more thorough discussion about blockchain, Bitcoin, and things which I see in my legal practice, feel free to reach out to me during lunch, or you can add me on LinkedIn. I always reply. Thanks a lot for your attention.